Hi, welcome to today's presentation of phonics in EYFS. I'm coming to you from Braywick Court School and Bray Preschool, and if you're joining as one of the parents or carers, hello, nice to see you, and if you're from elsewhere, then hello, come on in and get yourself a cup of tea and sit down ready for today's presentation. So the aim of today is that we're going to have a look at the overview of phonics phases, with particular look at letters and sounds, which is the government scheme, and it's something that we use and follow at Braywick Court School. We also use Jolly Phonics, we use their songs as well, and we also use some different features of different schemes. We use some Fred Fingers and robot arms that come from some other places as well. We're going to look at some games and fun activities to support early reading, look at reading into writing in the early years foundation stage, and then have a look at reading at home. And all of these are ideas and some suggestions of how you can support your child at home. So starting with phase 1, this is a phase that is normally completed and the children are exposed to within preschool and nursery. So it concentrates on developing the children's speaking and listening skills and lays the foundations for the phonics work that happens in phase 2. There is an emphasis during phase 1 to get the children attuned to the sounds around them and ready to begin developing oral blending and segmenting skills. So this phase is divided into 7 different aspects. Each aspect contains 3 strands. So the first is tuning into sounds, which is the auditory discrimination, listening and remembering sounds, the auditory memory and sequencing, and talking about sounds, which is developing vocabulary and language comprehension. So it is intended that in preschool each of these aspects is dipped into. They're not taught in a sequence or an order. They're dipped into and have a balance of activities for each one, and then it is usually that aspect 7 will come later when children have had plenty of opportunity to develop their sound and discrimination skills. So just diving a little bit deeper into each aspect. Aspect 1 is our general sound discrimination, which is our environmental sounds. So this is where the children will listen to sounds around them and they will develop some listening skills. They will look at going on listening walks. They'll drum on different items outside and compare the sounds. They'll play lots of lotto games and listen to different shakers, and it's about being able to listen to the sounds around them. Aspect 2 is our discrimination of instrumental sounds. So this is where the children will develop an awareness of sounds that are made by various instruments and noisemakers. They will look at comparing and matching sound makers, playing instruments alongside a story, and listening to making loud and quiet sounds and starting to develop an awareness of that. And then aspect 3 is our general sound and discrimination, which is our body percussion. So we're looking at children singing songs and rhymes and listening to music and developing a sound vocabulary. So it's all about them being able to use the other 2 areas that they've dipped into and sort of put them all together. Then moving on to aspect 4, you've got rhythm and rhyme, and this is looking at rhyming stories and bingo and clapping out syllables in words and listening to the odd one out. So it's again building and being able to hear rhythm and rhyme within stories, which also will help to transfer later on when the children are looking at reading within foundation stage 2, where they will look at being able to listen to rhyming words and carry on a rhyming string. Moving on to then aspect 5, this is where the children are looking at alliteration and they're looking at focusing on the initial sounds in words, which is the first sound that you hear in a word. So you might play some I Spy type activities, or you might play matching objects with the initial sound activities, and some of these we'll have a look at later in some of the games that you might be able to play at home. Then you're moving into the voice sounds in aspect 6. So that is about the children being able to listen and hear to the sounds in a word. So they might pick out a picture of a cup and the teacher might model sounding out that word. So they might say k, up, cup, and then the children are able to hear the sounds and see them with the picture at the same time. And then moving into aspect 7, that's looking at practicing our blending and segmenting. And that is sort of where children are able to listen to a word that is being segmented and blended. So again, if we use the word cup, the teacher is segmenting the word cup, up, and the children are able to find the picture and match it to the word that's being said, and that's about them being able to move into the next stage of hearing sounds, ready to start learning them in reception class. So having a look at some games and some ideas for each one. Some of them I've already said before, but we'll just have a look at some more. So in aspect 1, you might go on some listening walks, you might collect noisemakers and play Guess the Sound. You could play I Hear with My Little Ear and talk about the sounds that you like and don't like, and you might draw them down. And that's just about being able to distinguish all of the things that you might hear in a day. Aspect 2, you might have a go at playing a listening and copying game using instruments. You might make a tune with an instrument and the child's got to listen to that and copy it back. You might create a musical show and perform using instruments and noisemakers. You might make your own instrument. You might make a shaker using a toilet roll holder, some paper and some rice and an elastic band. Really simple. And allow your child to have a go at making sounds using their noisemaker. And you might add sound effects to a story using your noisemakers or some instruments when you're doing story time at home or when we're doing it at nursery or school. We'll always see how we can add those things in to make the children's experiences of listening to sounds better. Then looking at body percussion, you might play follow the leader, and you might take turns to have a go at using your body to make sounds and copying each other. You could listen to some music and clap along with the beat. You could use your voice to make sounds. You might make sounds of a car or a dog or a train or anything that you can hear in your house and see if you can guess the sound that each other are making. You might play Pat a Cake Baker's Man and learn how to use your hands to clap to the beat. There's lots of different rhymes and things that you can find online that have clapping beats along with them that you could have a go at together. For rhythm and rhyme, you might sing some nursery rhymes, play the odd one out. You could listen to some rhyming words, and the child has got to find out which one doesn't rhyme with the rest of them, and that's a good way of them being able to distinguish between the words that they hear. You might read some rhyming storybooks or play matching picture cards to the rhyme. There's lots of different ways that you can play with rhymes and link them into everyday language. Alliteration, you might play Silly Soup. We really like to play this at school. We'll think of 3 things that start with the same letter, or even more if we're playing with all of the children, and then you will make a silly soup using the same things that start with that same letter. You might go on a letter sound hunt. You might want to find things in your environment that begin with the same sound. You might play Name the Zoo Animals using the same letter for their name and species. So you might have Tommy Tiger or Sally Snake. Lots of different ways that you can play that. With aspect 6, voice sounds, you might use your voice to create some different sound effects. You might create a sound effect of a ticking clock or a doorbell, and you've got to guess each other's sound like you did in one of the aspects before. You could sing Old MacDonald and make the sounds of the animals, or play an animal guessing game where you make the noise of the animal and you've got to guess which animal you think that the person is. And then with aspect 7, you might say, I went to the farm and I saw a, and you might pick an animal that's a 3-letter word, and so it's easier to blend and segment back together again. So you might say, I saw a dog, d-og, and the child's got to try and blend your word back together again by listening to the sounds that you are saying. You might listen as words are sounded out. So you might say, could you please go and put this in the b-i-n? And the child's got to then recognise that you're saying bin and go and put the object in the bin. And you might see how many sounds that you can hear in the word as well. So you might look at early using of Fred fingers and sounding the sounds out on each finger and seeing if they can guess how many sounds that they can hear.
Moving on to the next part of the presentation, we're looking at some online games and apps that you can play, or your child can play in their spare time. So we've got Phonics Play, which is an online platform with lots of different games for the children to play, all the way from Phase 1 Phonics to Phase 5. So your child can have a look at some games that help them with their listening of sounds and matching pictures to the right sound or the right letter. There's lots and lots of different games on there that you can play, and we play with that website lots and lots at school and at nursery, and the children absolutely love playing on them. You then have Letters and Sounds, which is partnered with the government scheme that they've written that we use. If you go onto their website, you've got all of the phases down the left-hand side of the website, and then you can select some games on there or some resources. There's some printable things that you can do with your child and lots of really lovely ideas. Then there's the Phonics Gamer, which is a new phonics platform online. You can sign up and play lots of different games again with different phases, so you can start them on Phase 1. We have Oxford Owl, which is all of the different reading scheme books that we use at school, and they have an online registration for parents and children and teachers, so we're using it at Braywick Court at the moment. You can sign up for free and access some of the library on there. I would recommend that you start with Lilac books. They are the wordless books that children begin on when they join reception, which encourages them to make up stories using the pictures and gives them some understanding of comprehension and answering questions about the story, and then being able to make up their own story. Every child, when they join reception class at our school, starts on a Lilac book, and they are encouraged to do that for a few weeks before we start our teaching of phonics and move them on to word books. Then there is Alpha Blocks, either online or on the app. There are some fantastic videos and some teaching videos on there. It's already on BBC iPlayer, so you can go and have a watch of that if your child is ready to. And again, the games are all linked to the videos, and they are absolutely fantastic. CBeebies have some amazing apps. Lots of the apps on the CBeebies website, the children will play at the school or preschool on the interactive whiteboard, and they are really educational and really fun for the children and engaging. And then Jolly Phonics has a lessons app on, I think on iOS and probably on any other Play Store. And it basically has all of the songs and some teaching ideas and some examples of the sounds that you can listen to with your child at home. It's a really great platform, and I think it will help your child to be ready for school and be ready for phonics if you wanted to have a go at introducing some of the sounds to them. So we're now going to move on to the structure of lessons in reception class. So all of phase 1 will have been done at preschool or nursery, and now this is moving into reception when your child starts in September. So we begin our lesson by reviewing the sounds that we have previously practiced or the letters that we've learnt. We will then teach a new grapheme or phoneme correspondence. We will have a go at practicing some blending and segmenting and looking at tricky words, which I'll come on to a little bit later. We will then practice our new phoneme and grapheme, so we might play a game with it, we might watch a video, we might have Izzy and Bob, our class puppets, out, and we might play a game with them, and then we will apply it. So we will either have a go at reading or writing some captions or some sentences, or matching the sound to the correct picture or letter or word. There's lots of different things that we will do that is progressive through the phases of phonics. So, having a look at the sounds and the phases that we go through in reception. Phase 1, as I said before, is done in nursery and preschool. Phase 2 and 3 is taught in reception class and phase 4 at the end of the summer. And then in your year 1 class, you will teach phase 5 phonics, which will get the children ready for their phonics screening check. So it is very progressive through the 3 stages of learning, and there's lots of different things that the children will learn and do along the way. So we will begin in the order of the sounds that is shown on the mat here. So we will start with S and then move on to A, T, P, I, N, and then so on. And each week we will cover a letter a day, and then on the Friday we will have a review lesson and we will practice and consolidate, and then when the children are ready to move on, we will move them on. That then takes us on to phase 3. So this is the next sound where we then start looking at digraphs and trigraphs. So a digraph is 2 letters that make one sound. So for example, you've got ch and sh and th on there. And then a trigraph is 3 letters that make one sound, and the children will learn those and will use them within their writing. And we also have the sound mats all around the classroom so that when the children are practicing their writing, they are using these to support them. So moving on, there's now a video here, which I'm not going to play all of it, I'll play a little bit of it. And if you want to go and have a look, later on you can type in Jolly Phonics letter sounds into YouTube and this video will come up. So this video is an example of pronouncing all of the different letter sounds. We find that sometimes when children come into school, they have what we call a schwa on the end of their pronunciation. So for example, instead of saying s and t and p, which is just the very start of the sound and the soft sound, they might say s and p and t. And so they're adding on an extra part to the sound that isn't there. And when they read with that sound, if they're pronouncing it in that way, it's really difficult for them to blend their words back together again. So we encourage everybody to watch this video, and when they're supporting their children, this is a really good video to refer back to if you're not sure how something is pronounced. So let's have a quick look and then we will move on.
snake, a, ant, t, t, tennis, I, ink, p, p, puff, net.
So that was just a little look at some of the pronunciation of the sounds. And as I said, it's a really great video to refer back to if you're ever not sure. And when you're supporting your child with their reading, it's really important that you are modelling the same sounds that they would have learnt at school, and so that they have consistency across the two. Moving on to the next part then, we're looking at the Jolly Phonics songs that the children sing. And they go with each time the child learns a new sound, we teach them a song and an action to go with it. And this helps the children to recognise the sound that they're hearing. It gives them something to refer to. If they're trying to remember a sound, we can show them the action, and the children will then know what sound they're looking for. And it helps to make phonics lessons fun and engaging. And I'm sure you will hear your child singing them around the house as and when they're learning them. So just going to have a quick look at some of the songs. And again, you can find these on YouTube, and we have them on CD at school, so you can buy the CD if you want to and have a listen at home.
Snake. The snake is in the grass, the snake is in the grass. The snake is in the grass. Ant. Ants on my arm. Ants on my arm. Ants on my arm, they're causing me alarm.
So as you can see, with each sound, we have the action on the screen as well. So it tells you what you should do if you are singing that song. So for example, with ants on the arm, we show the children you put your arm out, you pretend that you've got some ants on your arm, and you wiggle your fingers and act as if you are getting them off of your arm. So there are lots of different ways that we make those songs fun, and the children use the actions religiously all the way through year 1 and year 2 when they're looking at writing. So moving on, we move on now to tricky words. So I mentioned tricky words earlier. These are words that are sight words or high frequency words, and they are words that are not phonetically decodable. So they therefore need to be learnt by sight. So in reception class, the children start with set 1 and they move all the way through till set 11, and it is something that they get given when their reading books are changed, and every week we will test the children on if they have learnt them at home, and then when they have learnt them and they can tell us them in and out of order and in different contexts, we will move them on to the next set. So the children have lots of incentives, they have lots of house points to keep them going, and it's really important that when they are then reading word books, in lots of the sentences you will see the tricky word. So the children need to be able to see the tricky word, recognise it and say it, and not try and sound it out or blend and segment it, because it will not work. So that is why we have them, that is why it's really important for the children to learn them, and there are lots of different words that they have to learn that are high frequency words through year 1 and year 2 as well, and we start them in reception so that when they're reading it makes it easier for them. So moving on to some of the games that we play in reception class. There's some games that you can play at home as well. They're really easy for you to just use paper and pen, and we use these within our lessons, and we try and mix up all of the different games that we're playing during the week so that the children have a really good variety of ways of applying the sounds that they know. So for example, we might play Find My Sound at the beginning of a lesson. So we will say a word, or we will say a sound, or show a picture, and the children have got to find the correct sound or digraph or trigraph. It's very progressive, this game. We can scale it back or we can make it harder. And so the children love to come up using the pen on the whiteboard and having a go at finding the sound that we're asking them to. And as I said earlier, a digraph is 2 letters that make 1 sound, like the ones that you will see on the screen, or a trigraph is 3 letters that make 1 sound. Another game that we play is Guess My Sound. So a little bit like some of the games that you might play in phase 1. we will look at some pictures on the board, and I will say to the children, can you guess my sound? And the children have to use their knowledge of initial sounds and have a look at the pictures. So they should identify that mud and man and magic all begin with the sound. And so they should be able to come and say to me, the sound is because they all begin with that sound, and be able to model it on their Fred fingers and be able to sound them out and show me how they know. And finally, moving on to more of the spring and summer term in reception class, we might have a go at finishing my sentence. So I will have a go at writing a sentence on a board, but I will leave something out of the sentence that the children have to fill in. So not only do they have to look at the picture and fill in the correct word, they also have to be able to read the sentence. So there will always be a tricky word in there, which in this case is the. So they will have to recognise that and know that that says the, and then they will have to sound out the missing word. So the missing word here would be red. So they would use their Fred fingers and sound out d, red. And they would then have a go at using a sound mat or a letter mat and writing that word down for me. We also have sound buttons, which are the dots and the line underneath the word fish. Sound buttons help the children to read the word as they're learning to read. So for example, the dots represent a single sound, so f and I, and then the line represents a digraph or trigraph. So it teaches the children that although there are two sounds and two letters, they make one sound together, which is why the line shows that it's one sound. So they would sound this out by pressing on the sound buttons and saying f, I, sh, fish, and being able to sound out the word. They're just another thing that help the children with their reading and their writing. Some more online games and apps that you can play with your child in reception class. Quite a lot of them are the same as the ones I've mentioned before, but I thought I'd put them up anyway. So again, we have Phonics Play, we have Letters and Sounds, the Phonics Gamer, we have Oxford Owl. Another one that we use at Braywick Court School is Bug Club. Lots of you will be familiar with it. The children all have a login from the very beginning of the year. It allows us to set the children with books on the correct book level for them to read, and it's more of a game, so the more books they read, the more points they get, and they have a little virtual world that they can go and spend their coins on of the things that they won, and they also have to answer some comprehension questions at the end of each story to check their understanding, and they'll get some more points for that as well. So it's an incentive for the children, it's fun, it's really interactive, and us as teachers can keep an eye on the children's reading and monitor how they're doing. We also have Teach Your Monster to Read, which is an online game or an app. We have been setting the children up for the last few years with this, so that when they are either doing, if they have to do online learning, or if they are at school, they can have a go at playing this and bettering their phonics. Again, it's a game function, so it takes them through a journey. They are looking at sounds and letters that we've learnt at school, and they have to choose the right path and choose the right answer to move on to the next part of the game, which is really fun and the children love it. Again, there's also alpha blocks. We sometimes use alpha blocks within our phonics lessons. There's some really lovely videos and songs that are on there, so the children really enjoy to watch that, and it mixes up our lessons a little bit. And then, as I said before, there's the Johnny Phonics Lessons app, which has the songs and the sounds and the actions on there, and some games that you can play with your child. So now moving into writing expectations for the end of early years. It's always really important for us to touch on writing because it ties in really closely with the reading that the children do, and it's very progressive within early years. So the second they start learning their phonics, they can start applying that within their writing, and the more they learn and the better they can understand the use of phonics and how that they can use those to spell and read, it makes their writing better. So at the end of early years in the summer term, the children are expected to use their phonic knowledge to write words in ways which match their spoken sounds, write some irregular common words which are their tricky words, write simple sentences which can be read by themselves and others, and have some words that are spelt correctly and others that are phonetically plausible. So the children are encouraged to write in a way that matches their spoken sounds. It doesn't have to be spelt right. That is looked into further in year 1 and 2 when they look at spelling rules, but in early years, as long as a word can be read by the children themselves by sounding it out and by an adult, then that is perfectly fine for the end of early years. Now, in reception, we also teach a letter join handwriting scheme. We do this for a few reasons, because the children's work is presented in a much neater way. At the end of year 2, children, if they want to be at a certain level within their writing, need to be able to join up their letters, and using precursive handwriting gives them the line in and the line out to be able to join easily. And it means that the children are learning a skill of handwriting, which is really important, and it makes handwriting easier in the long run as they are learning to write their letters. So we use this. We also have an app that you can use to do that, and when you join us, parents will be given access to that app so that the children can practice their letters at home. And we teach handwriting lessons in school, and we work on children's fine motor and gross motor skills before this, and then we continue to work on that through teaching them their letters. So how we would teach a letter to be written with precursive formation: we would begin by teaching the children that you start at the bottom of the lead-in line. So as you can see on the screen, you start at the bottom, and we say a little rhyme that says, "Here we go." And so as you're doing your lead-in line, we would say, "Here we go," and then we would go up to the letter, back down and round, up to the top, and as we are finishing our lead out, we would say, "Off we go." So it would be "Here we go" and "Off we go," and the children are taught to use that every single time they're writing, and we know that when they're saying it, it means they're starting in the right place and they're finishing in the right place, and that just helps them to understand how to write. And we do lots of modelling of this. Our precursive letter mats are all around our environment, and the children are encouraged to use them whenever they're having a go at writing. And it's really important that they use those tools efficiently to help them so that their writing is better by the time they leave us to go into year 1. So moving on to our last point of today's training, we're looking at reading at home. So there's lots of different ideas and things that you can do to read with your child at home, but the number one thing we say about reading at home is if your child is tired or unhappy, do not read with them. The last thing that we want to do is for the children to feel like they're being forced to do something that they are not happy to do, and eventually that will develop a negative behaviour towards that thing. So if it's reading, we would rather that when they are happy and they're willing to, that they start reading, rather than them doing it when they're not happy or they're tired, because they will switch off to reading and they will not want to learn. So it's really important to get them at the right time. Reading should be for as long as they want to be reading, and they should be concentrated and they should be happy. When they are writing in their reading diaries, we ask you if you write purposeful, informative comments in their records so that it can help us to support your child, it can help us to praise their achievements, and we will write back similar comments to ensure that there is a really good link between home and school, and we are all trying to strive to do the same thing and support the child in the best way possible. Adults reading stories is also really important to help promote a love of reading. At Braywick, we are all advocates of reading. We all love to read. The children hear us and see us reading all the time, and it's really important that that is also modelled at home so that the children don't just think that reading is for school. They need to understand that it is a reading and a skill for life. So if your child is not enjoying reading or doesn't want to do it, it's really important to have a look at mixing up your routine. So here is an example of mixing up your routine. You might have on the day 1, on a Monday, the adult might read a few pages of the story. Then on the second day, you might look at the story and discuss the pictures together rather than reading the words. Day 3, you might get the child to have a go at reading a few pages. You might do I do one, you do one, and so forth, so that you're doing some modelling and then the children are having a go at doing it. On day 4, you might try and find some tricky words. Just do a tricky word hunt in that book. See how many tricky words can you find. Later on, you might see if you can write them down and make a tally next to how many you found in that book. And then on the 5th day, you might read a little bit more of the book. So you don't have to get through the book in a day or a week. You can take as long as you need to get through that story with the child. And if they are not enjoying the school book, we might have a look at changing it up, and they might have a go at reading some different stories at home. As I said earlier, word list books are really important to promote creativity through making up stories and support reading comprehension skills. So as your child enters reception, they will be put on a lilac book. Whether they can read or not, we encourage the creativity of story making skills first, and then once we start teaching our phonics sounds, we will then move the children on when they're ready to start reading and blending and segmenting in their stories. So finally, some ideas for questioning and supporting reading at home. The goal at the end of early years with reading is to be able to read and understand very simple sentences, use phonic knowledge to decode regular words and read them aloud accurately, read some common irregular words, again there's those tricky words, they're really important for your reading and your writing, and demonstrate an understanding when talking with others about what they've read. So on the screen there's some really good ideas about and questions about how you can encourage comprehension and encourage your child to understand decoding in a book and looking at tricky words. And there's some really lovely ideas to help further the understanding of the story. So I hope today has been helpful for you. I hope that you are able to take away some ideas and some games and things you can play with your children or your child. And I hope that this helps to give you more of an understanding about phonics and reading and writing at school, both preschool and in foundation stage 2. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch. We are always happy to help and always happy to give you some more ideas or provide any resources that you may need. Thank you.